Okay, you know, I could see both players. We got a little bit of support, of course. Speaking of support, you know, these players have had lots of support from friends and family to get to this spot, whether it be through practice, preparation, or of course, travel. These players have been to many tournaments, getting themselves ready for this big match. Henry, a seasoned player from Brazil, a finalist at a regional championship, multiple top cut appearances, and has traveled internationally before for the LAIC last year. So another solid finish, looking to make that champion added to that list of accomplishments.
Yeah, very impressive already with the thumbs up ready to go. But Sergio, of course, no slouch either, with a top 16 at Baltimore just recently and another top 16 in Orlando. So, you know, both of these players with accomplishments in their own right. So, but Sergio especially with a big breakout accomplishment here.
So now that we're here, now that both players have their headphones on, we can talk a little bit about the list differences. There's really a couple of cards that stand out. Both players have, of course, chosen to play an A-Spec card, the same one playing that unfair stamp. But the big difference between both lists is that Sergio does play that one copy of Briar, allowing him to take extra prize cards if Henry is at exactly 2 prizes. That could be a big difference maker for you.
Yeah, absolutely could. We saw yesterday how in the game with Otavio, of course, he had to play differently, even just considering the possibility that his opponent might be playing the Briar, and that kind of end up becoming his own doing. So it's something that both these players will have in mind going into this match, I'm sure, because it is a card that Charizard can and often will play.
So another big thing, as we mentioned, of course, the coin flip. The player that does get to go first does have an advantage in being able to, you know, evolve their Pokemon before their opponent. They are limited in the fact that they can't attack or play a supporter card, but, you know, this is an interesting factor. There's a little bit of advantages to going first and going second. Of course, when you win the coin flip, you get to choose. If you're in this position, Freya, if you're winning the coin flip, is it automatically going first, or does this matchup maybe change some of that dynamic?
So it's a little bit tough because a lot of these Charizard decks, and I'm looking at the way these two are built specifically, they are focusing heavily on this Arven, right? So I feel like a lot of the time, if you're focusing on this, even though it's a stage 2 setup deck, something that's going second is honestly just better because you can go ahead and Arven first, you can almost get like a better bench setup a lot of the time, and you're not vulnerable in terms of having to bench that Rotom V for the early draw, which can be a very easy 2-price pick-up in the early game.
Absolutely, many factors that are important in this matchup. Mainly, though, another big factor, Pidgeot EX is the support engine for this Pokemon, allowing you to use Quick Search once per turn. And with Quick Search online, if one player has it and the other player doesn't, that's another big factor in this matchup.
Yeah, it really, really does. We've seen so often on those stream matches that normally if there's 2 Pidgeot decks going, the one that sets up Pidgeot will often win, and the one who don't will lose. So I'm sure both of those players want to get it out as quickly as possible so they can have that advantage of searching once per turn for any single card in the deck. One of the strongest abilities we've ever seen printed in the trading card game.
So both players have drawn their opening hand. Henry will be kicking things off, going first. We'll see these players put their prize cards out. We'll be looking for some important cards to note in this place. Of course, you know, naturally, putting your prize cards to the right is normal, so we'll have to make sure everything gets adjusted. A couple of key pieces right away for both these players. Both Pidgeot EX in the prize cards for Sergio. That is not what you want to see whatsoever.
Not what you see in any match, let alone the finals of an internationals. That's horrendous prizes for Sergio.
And while there are some pieces, of course, that Henry would like, those prize cards are definitely very manageable. So I'd be very interested to see, Freya, how Sergio maybe, you know, adjusts his strategy now that he knows both Pidgeot are in the prizes.
Yeah, okay, but saving grace here, we did see those 2 Pidgeot work towards the lower end of the prizes. Most players do tend to take their prizes from the bottom to the top, so if Sergio follows that, then you should be able to take them pretty quickly at least.
And here we go. We are getting into it. The Juniors Finals match here at the Latin America International Championships. Let's get this action kicked off, starting, of course, with Henry. He will look at this hand, see what cards are available, and right away does have that Play Pokemon stamped Buddy Buddy Poffin to set the board up.
Yeah, already a great start. This has become, ever since it released, a staple in every single setup deck. Does let you, when you play it, search your deck for up to 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less and put them onto your bench. So you can go ahead and use that to grab your Pidgey, grab your Charmander, grab your Duskulls, grab all your setting up basics.
So Henry will take this first opportunity to check through the deck, see what Pokemon are available. We'll most likely see one of those Pidgey get bench in preparation for hopefully an early Pidgeot EX Evolution thanks to Rare Candy, and that really is the big card that both players are playing the maximum 4 copies of, since it allows you to skip those stages of evolution and get Charizard into play as soon as the second turn of the game.
Yeah, I'll be honest, were it not for this card existing, I think that most, if not all, competitive decks would be either basic focused or stage 1 decks. Of course, with this Rare Candy, you can skip that middle evolution and go straight to the stage 2, so you can go straight from the Charmander to the Charizard, straight from the Pidgey to the Pidgeot. You don't even need to play Pidgeotto. You just, most of these lists don't. You just skip straight to the Pidgeot and get things going as quickly as you can.
So you see Henry immediately grab the Pidgey. That's sort of the gimme choice. It now becomes what that second bench Pokemon will be. Things like Duskull are very solid to have down to, put pressure on your opponent with that Cursed Blast ability from the Dusclops or Dusknoir. We do, of course, see that one Dusknoir is in the prize cards, so we'll have to rely off of just the Dusclops' Cursed Blast ability if he would like to use that. So even knowing that, we'll still grab the Duskull, put it onto the bench, and now from here, we'll see if Henry has something like a Rotom potentially to draw a few more cards. Of course, instant charges, super solid on this first turn, but that's not the case. We'll just pass things over to Sergio, where immediately with this Buddy Puffin, he will get the bad news that Pidgeot EX is prized. Don't quite grab that Pidgey yet, Sergio. You might want to rethink things once you see what you've got in the deck.
Yeah, I guess he might think, even after looking through the deck and seeing that both are prized, he might think, I don't want to give away too much to my opponent. Maybe I'll just put it down, make my opponent think that I have access to it still, and then my opponent might still target it down when it actually ends up working out better for me because I can't really make use of it anyway.
Also, that Charmeleon in the prize cards can be a little bit of an annoyance. There have been things like the Pokemon Tool Card Technical Machine Devolution that have come into play. Things like that, of course, can disrupt the strategies a bit, but of course, anytime that you can save one of those Rare Candy and slowly evolve a Charmander on the bench, it becomes a little bit more useful as Arven gets played, and of course, Sergio wanting to use this card as much as possible early in the game to search out a Pokemon Tool card and an item card from his deck.
Yeah, and this goes back to what I mentioned, of course, right at the start of the game, which is it's really nice if you are going second that you can play that Arven on the first turn, and it means that Sergio, even though he's going second, is going to have a much sort of like stronger and more reliable board setup in this game here. Be able to get out that Cleffa, draw a bunch of cards, get out not just one but 2 Charmander, and the Pidgey and a Duskull for good measure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Sergio grabbed a tool card off of that Arven. That could signal that there's things like Forest Sealstone in the hand.
Yeah, we see it there.
It is in the hand, so that is a good card to have. Of course, both players utilizing that one copy of the card, Star Alchemy. When you attach it to one of your V Pokemon, like Rotom or Lumineon V, you can use your once per game V-Star power to search out any card. Sometimes it's good to use it early, sometimes it's good to use it late, but it's definitely a powerful tool you have access to.
Yeah, and here's a great turn 1 play here from Sergio, able to use that Fire Energy just to retreat the Duskull and retreat into the Cleffa, go for that grasping draw, top up the hand to 7 cards in hand. This is an amazing turn 1 for Sergio.
All thanks to that free attack cost. Some of these, baby Pokemon have access to. Some support Pokemon attacks for 0 energy, thanks to, of course, being that type of Pokemon, as Henry will kick things off here, drawing a card, and now is the big question, can he put some pressure on an Arven to start things off? That's going to be a great way to potentially get Charizard out and attacking.
Yeah, and you have to wonder as well, with the choice to not grab something from the Arven from Sergio, maybe it was because he was aware that he was going to go for the grasping draw, and he didn't want to necessarily give himself one less card to draw by filling up the hand, and forcing himself to commit something early like a Defiance Band.
So this is the big question here for Henry. Now, of course, Cleffa is a great support Pokemon, but it only has 30 HP, so maybe there's a world here for Henry where he can get a Charizard into play and also use something like the Cursed Blast ability to knock out a more desirable Pokemon on the bench, in addition to this Cleffa as well.
Yeah, and now this is what it's going to come down to with the Pidgey bench, right? Because, like we just mentioned, Henry doesn't know that the Pidgeot is prized, but if he can get the read on that somehow, he might target something other than the Pidgey. But if he doesn't, that Pidgey will be KO'd, but Sergio's kind of, in a way, okay with it because he can't get the Pidgeot out anyway.
So Rare Candy and Defiance Band, the 2 choices off of the Arven. And with the deck not being shuffled, I'm sure we have something like an Ultra Ball to potentially go back into the deck, or Henry is considering using this Lumineon and its Luminous Sign ability. Now, of course, only one supporter card can be played per turn, but you now have a target to attach Forest Sealstone to, so that you can potentially get out Rare Candy Pidgeot and Rare Candy Charizard this turn.
Yeah, but of course there is a little bit of a risk here. As you can see, that Luminion V has 170 HP. So we mentioned at the start of the game, if you wait to the point where you can take a 2-prize knockout as your first knockout, you don't mind taking first blood, as it were. And if Sergio is able to get a Charizard out and go ahead and KO that Luminion, that prize trade starts to look a lot better for him all of a sudden.
So the supporter of choice will be an Arven for the following turn, potentially, and immediately looks like we may see the Forest Sealstone be attached to this Luminion, and let it use that once per game Star Alchemy V-Star power. Now, we already know there's a rare candy in the hand, so this could signal Henry maybe grabbing something like Pidgeot, which, of course, you're using your 1-card search per game with this, of course, Forest Sealstone, but then in return, for the rest of the game, it's like you get to use a Forest Sealstone from here on out.
Yeah, and let's see if the trend continues, right? We did say right at the start that likely who can set up Pidgeot and keep it there will win the game. In this instance, it will be Henry setting it up first. Will that see through to win at the end of this game? We'll have to wait to see how the rest plays out to find out, but it's already looking very, very good for Henry on his second turn.
Exactly what you want to see, Freya, on the second turn of the game. You get to go before your opponent in terms of taking actions. You get to evolve before, so using that powerful attack is exactly what you want to do. So there it is. Rare Candy Pidgeot Quick Search is now up and running. And there's another rare candy in the hand, so if Henry chooses to, he could find something like Charizard EX from the Quick Search. And Rare Candy Charizard means that thanks to that Infernal Rain ability on Charizard EX, there's no need to attach those 2 energies from hand. You can accelerate them straight from the deck.
But again, this is where you have to be a little bit careful, right? Because carrying just a Clever by itself doesn't really feel great. You're taking 1 prize, but then you're already putting your opponent's Charizard EX to be able to do 210 damage with Burning Darkness. We do also know that Sergio does play that Defiance band, like even bump it up to 240. So you've got to be a little bit careful and a bit mindful about that, because you could combine it. Say you evolve this Duskull into a Dusclops, you actually suddenly have a KO on a Pidgeot EX out of nowhere.
Yeah, of course, board control is a big part of this mirror match. Those, like you said, frail 2-prize Pokemon, the Rotom V and the Luminion V, are something that you, of course, want to avoid benching as much as possible. So Henry, in this case, looks like just valuing getting Pidgeot into play and searching out an additional card. Since there was a second rare candy, Henry could have potentially grabbed Ultra Ball instead of rare candy off of the Arven, but instead already just wants to have rare candy for the following turn, and will instead, it looks like, grab the Cleffa and another Charmander, potentially signaling a Grasping Draw in response to Sergio using it on his first turn.
Oh, I don't know about that, actually. I think there's the Ultra Ball in hand already. I saw him kind of moving the energies into the deck. I think he's going to be getting ready to go for a Infernal Rain. I think he's going to fetch a Charizard here.
All right, that would be a solid line. Of course, taking prize cards is how you win the Pokemon TCG. So you got a balance between, of course, knocking out a more desirable Pokemon would be favorable, but immediately you're going to put your pressure on your opponent to find a Charizard EX in response, as well as a way to bring up one of those bench Pokemon like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I guess in this instance, it might just pay off because, as we know, Sergio's Pidgeot EX is a prize, so there's no way for him to put together a combo turn with a Quick Search to try and put together the really big combo turn to KO Henry's Pidgeot EX, which would probably be the ideal response. It's going to be quite hard to do that.
Yeah, and this was a really tough discard for Henry. Had all desirable cards in the hand. The Arven, the Defiance Band, the rare candy that was needed to evolve this Charizard, and now with this Ultra Ball has to get rid of 2 very crucial resources, Boss's Orders and Counter Catcher, 2 of the 4 gusting cards that Henry plays to target those bench Pokemon.
Yeah, that's mega rough, but that's the decision that has to be made. So rare candy into the Charizard EX, that Infernal Rain ability coming in, letting Henry attach 3 fire energies from the deck to his Pokemon in any way he likes. Such a strong ability. It's an instant payoff, essentially, on the stage 2 when you get it into play. And with 2 of those 3 energy, will go onto the Charizard EX itself to power up that attack cost for the Burning Darkness.
It does also put the energy on the Charmander. There's good and bad when it comes to that. Of course, you get some energy ready onto it. It's going to want energy to attack at some point down the line. But if your opponent ever targets that down, the Charmander and all cards attached to it will be discarded. So Henry strikes first, taking the first prize card here of game number 1. Let's see how Sergio can respond. And this is looking like a pretty solid hand. I see Rare Candy and a Forest Sealstone, which can be used in return by Sergio, since that Luminion has now used Luminous Sign to fetch any supporter out of the deck.
Oh, I mean, here I was saying, oh, I don't know if Sergio can put together this turn where he carries the Pidgeot, but I'm wondering if it might actually be possible, you know. Because here's the thing, if you use the Dusclops to place damage onto this Pidgeot here, then suddenly that makes your counter catcher. Oh no, wait, your counter catcher's live anyway, right? But either way, yeah, you can put it together here if he's can find all the right means to KO it, and then all of a sudden Henry's once per turn quick search option will be gone.
The math would work out well. Of course, Burning Darkness doing 180 plus 30 for each prize card. So 2 prize cards taken means that you're doing 240 damage. Plus the Cursed Blast abilities, 5 damage counters from Dusclops or Dusknoir, but the Dusclops would work just fine. Means that you're dealing enough to take the knockout. Additionally, you might not even need to put the damage counters on the Pidgeot if you have something like with the Defiance ban, since you are putting your opponent to 4 prize cards, so it would work out. We'll see if Sergio can find that. It's going to be hard without the Pidgeot, but Pheasantipede EX will make that a lot easier.
Yeah, that flip the script ability, we've seen it is staple in so many decks now, just letting you, if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn, lets you draw free cards, and these free cards are going to be key extra resources to see if you can put this together. There's the Forest Steelstone coming down onto the Luminion V, and it is going to be the V-Star power, that Star Alchemy, to search for any one card from the deck.
Yeah, and this would have been a perfect turn for Sergio if there were any of those Pidgeot EX in play. Already has 2 rare candies, so could respond in kind here to Henry's powerful turn 2. Instead, though, we'll have to potentially reevaluate how he wants to build this board up. Is he just going to rely off of the Flip the Script ability as much as possible, or will we see some potential other pieces? It will be Charizard EX grabbed from that Forest Sealstone, and now with Rare Candy, will respond in kind by using Infernal Rain to power up this Pokemon, as well as another energy attached anywhere if he'd like.
Looks like the answer is no, he would not like that. Just going to put the 2 fire energies onto the Charizard. And I kind of understand this because, like the direction a lot of these Charizard lists have been going in lately, they already were quite low on the fire energy count, but both of these lists have gone down to only 5 fire energy in the deck. It's a very low energy count, so every single energy you attach, even with acceleration, has to be placed optimally. And actually, just going to go for the Burning Darkness on the active.
So setting up for a 2-hit knockout, Burning Darkness dealing 210 damage to Henry's Charizard as action is back on him. And look at these 2 board states, Freya. Henry struck first and has a lot more support online thanks to Pidgeot. If Sergio isn't able to, cook something up very soon, he may be in a lot of trouble just because of the consistency and game plan execution Pidgeot EX provides the player who's using it.
Yeah, and it looks like that prediction from the start might be coming true, right? Henry just being able to, once per turn, search for any card with Pidgeot. And even in a late game scenario, right, we do see there at the bottom of the deck that Unfair Stamp. If Sergio can't get a Pidgeot out, that Unfair Stamp is going to be so brutal because you can't search your way out of it with that Pidgeot anymore.
Yeah, so Henry, I have to imagine in this spot, could consider playing Boss's Orders on an opposing Luminion, since, of course, it only has 170 HP, and could take another 2 prize cards. You have to, of course, balance the fact that these prize cards are available, but being overzealous could lead to your downfall.
But I mean, surely at this point, you're doing, you're not doing 210 damage yet, but if you can put together something with a Dusclops maybe, you go for this Pheasantipede, right? Because that's even better. The Luminion's kind of done its job at this point. It's there to be picked off at any point, but that Pheasantipede is pretty much the only consistency crutch that Sergio's working with right now. So if you can target that down, you absolutely would.
Yeah, you give and you take, right? Since you are using Curse Blast, right? 5 damage counters being placed wherever you'd like on one Pokemon is very solid, but you are giving your opponent prize cards. And you have to, again, be mindful of the route your opponent is trying to take to win the game. So Henry will have to consider that as he makes that selection off Quick Search again. Any card, so doesn't have to show Sergio which card was selected from the deck. And will now decide what he would like to do. Can still play a supporter card, attach, evolve, plenty of options at his disposal.
Yeah, and it looks like the choice was there, the Charmeleon. Okay, this makes a lot of sense as well. Just get your second Charmander evolved up into Charmeleon so that it can become a Charizard without the use of a rare candy, just getting it ready for the future. I like this a lot too. And it's just going to be an attacker to the active. Both of these players kind of playing it patient here, not wanting to take too many KOs too early on, it seems.
It will be the Burning Darkness, so 180 damage onto the bench. Top deck for turn, another rare candy. Would be great if you had something like Pidgeot to evolve. Now, of course, there is the Dusknoir as an option. The way the math works out, actually, at this point, of course, Charizard EX does have 120 HP remaining, so something like the Cursed Blast from the Dusknoir does do almost exactly enough, but no, nothing else besides drawing for turn and announcing Burning Darkness will take both of those Pidgeot EX off the prizes. That's exactly what Sergio wanted to see if he was taking 2 prize cards this turn.
Yeah, definitely. And now you got to be thinking, if you're Henry, do I consider trying to go after this Pidgey here? We've seen that it hasn't been evolved into anything yet. Maybe now is an opportunity to take it down, even at the prize trade, but also cut Sergio off from that key surge option.
Henry looking at this Night Stretcher, of course, a new powerful card released in Shrouded Fable, could put back this Charizard EX from the discard pile into the hand, allowing Henry to accelerate energies from the deck yet again and get another Charizard EX online. Does have to be mindful, though, that there are 2 fire energy in the discard pile, and having note of those resources are very important.
Yeah, I believe these players would have had a look to check to see, make sure there is enough energy available, given, like we just discussed, the energy count is quite low. So it'd be 2 in a discard pile, 1 already attached onto the Charmeleon there. So there should, in theory, be 2 more left in the deck. And there weren't any prizes at the beginning, were there? I don't recall seeing any. Oh, no, there's 1 actually. So, okay, but that's still fine.
1 in the deck, but 1 is just enough at this spot. Burning Darkness will find the final fire energy. Now, there are ways, of course, to recover those. You see the 2 Super Rods still in the deck. But for now, it's just going to be Henry accelerating that fire energy, shuffling the deck, and immediately looking to potentially grab that powerful A-Spec Unfair Stamp to disrupt Sergio, especially since he does not have Pidgeot EX set into play, which is sort of a safeguard almost to a disruptive card like Unfair Stamp.
Exactly, it is. And now, I've got to be honest, maybe Henry's considering, if he can, combining this Unfair Stamp with bringing up this Pheasantipity for a KO, so that way there is pretty much no, it's going to be very, very hard for Sergio to recover. He'll only be working with 3 cards.
So you got to balance both things. Of course, you would limit the card draw from your opponent, but you have to ask yourself, what would you rather have? Your opponent's ability to draw 3 cards or a Charizard EX out in play?
Yes, that's true.
And the way I see it, I think the chance of your opponent missing Charizard EX, spiraling the game out of control, just feels like too good of an opportunity to pass up.
But again, the way I'm thinking about it, though, is that this Charizard, even after these 2 prizes are taken, won't be KOing Henry's Charizard, so he doesn't necessarily have to deal with it straight away. And if you cut off the draw option, it means that Sergio is so much less likely to be able to set up a follow-up Charizard, because you essentially have to draw an out from your deck.
Yeah, the big piece here, though, for Henry, of course, let's remember that Ultra Ball on turn 2 did discard a Counter Catcher and a Boss's Order.
Oh,
so
that's
with both of those pieces
yeah.
down, you've got to maybe ask, do I have the flexibility here to make maybe a slightly more optimal play? Some would say, of course, to knock out that Pheasantipity. It's a little bit risky. You don't want to shut yourself out of options when this board state feels so good for you.
Yeah, you might be right. Well, either way, it's up to Henry to decide. The Unfair Stamp gets played. Let's see what he finds off of these 5 cards here. Ooh, getting a quick look.
Looks like a few pieces, something like Defiance Band, another rare candy. I think the only remaining piece that would be nice here for Henry is getting down another Charmander, of course, to make it so there's no risk in terms of getting a follow-up Charizard in case Sergio has, you know, a strong combination of cards, something like Rare Candy Dusknoir, Curse Blast, Rare Candy Charizard. It's always good to have a backup option. And Henry does have another Charmander, and I think that will be the choice here for Nest Ball.
Yeah, very, very sensible there. Given that there's only 1 Charizard in play, make sure you can follow up with another Charizard EX when you want to. And so a really good find there, that Nest Ball off of the Unfair Stamp. Now, in terms of the rest of the hand, another Rare Candy there ready to go. And thinking about it more, given the current situation, yeah, maybe it is just best here. Just deal with the Charizard. Like you said, sure, your opponent will get to draw 3 cards off and flip the script, but you're still taking out their biggest attacking threat. There's no Pidgeot on the field. Maybe that's just for the best for now.
Yeah, especially since you have a flexibility to grab any card. Quick Search has not been used yet, and you see that Super Rod, I think a very solid choice. There are the last remaining fire energies in the discard pile, and that's something you absolutely want to get back. So those 2 fire energies and an additional Pokemon can also be shuffled back in. I think the question here is, do you need another Charmander for this game? And I don't think you do, so a smart choice there for Henry. Doesn't want to maybe draw into that card later when he'd rather be a more powerful or useful card instead.
Yeah, absolutely. Get those energies back while you can, so you can make use of that Infernal Rain. And then, since you don't need to search anything bigger this turn, just make use of that quick search for the Super Rod. Retreat with the Cleffa, goes the Charizard into the active, Burning Darkness, 2 more prizes for Henry, over to Sergio to see how he can respond after this really brutal unfair stamp.
These are going to be big draws here for Sergio. Of course, does have some protection with the Flip the Script ability, as we will see Charmander come into the active spot, and right away, no cards played. Pheasantipiti's Flip the Script, allowing the hand to be filled up to 3. There's an Ultra Ball, but really looking for the rare candy. Do we see it?
Oh,
not
no.
quite. Now, key note here, that Lumineon, usually a great target off of Ultra Ball, is already in play. And this is not something great at all. I think that Charmeleon for Sergio is still in the prizes as well. It wouldn't be a great piece to evolve in this spot, but if you're not finding rare candies, you've got to build up to a Charizard somehow. You've got to ask, if Sergio can't attack this turn, what's the next best thing he can do?
It's really hard to say, right? I mean, you know that at least your Pidgeots are back into the deck if you have some way of putting that together, but maybe, yeah, just gonna have to try and maybe buy some time with this boss's orders. It doesn't really feel great, though. The Lumineon only has a retreat cost of 1. It's not exactly that hard to get out of the active spot.
We'll bring up the Lumineon. Henry did, of course, shuffle those Fire Energy back into the deck, so that's one way he can potentially pivot this Lumineon out of the active spot. And it looks like we're just going to see an energy brought back from the Night Stretcher and retreating into this Duskull, prioritizing, not giving up this Charmander. But this is disaster here, as Henry still has a boss's orders left and potentially even something like a Curse Bomb. I think Henry might have the pieces here. Rare candy into the Dusknoir. That means as long as there's an energy card, or excuse me, an energy card and something like a boss's orders, that could be all he needs here to close this game out, assuming he can knock out this Lumineon, but at minimum can take 2 prize cards if he chooses to.
Yeah, so it's going to be the boss's orders choice here, and I think because there is only 1 of those left in the deck, whereas you have more than sort of 1 switch out with the retreating, it makes sense to go for this here. Now, I do wonder, like, the rest of his prizes, there is a Fire Energy in the prizes. I don't know if it's going to end up being taken. Oh, but hold on, there's the other rare candy ready to go in the hand, so you can rare candy and use Infernal Rain. He's got it.
I think he's got all the pieces here. Henry having the double rare candy in combination with the Dusknoir, and by using the Cursed Blast ability and that boss's orders, will have enough here to close this game out, giving his opponent the prize, but taking a prize of his own, and the boss's orders onto either of these 2 prize Pokemon on the bench will close things out. Henry Kuninari taking game number 1 in this LAIC Finals.
Brazil 1-0 up against the US in this junior showdown, and already giving the thumbs up to the crowd. He is loving his position right now. Why wouldn't you? You are only 1 game away from becoming an international champion.
You see the excitement from the crowd. That was an intense game, of course. You've got to feel for Sergio a little bit in that spot. I think if he has Pidgeot EX, we definitely have a lot closer of a match. But that's part of the Pokemon TCG. Sometimes the cards you want are going to be in your prizes, and you saw that he was at a big disadvantage. If you're in his spot, though, you've got to shake that off and get yourself in a good mental spot to not let that affect you in Game 2.
Yeah, and I do believe we have the replay ready just to go over that Game 1 to show you guys at home just how that really played out. We did see Henry did go first. We were talking about whether going first or second was better, but Henry really used that going first advantage to the maximum here. That double Pidgeot prizing on Sergio's side really hurting him. Henry able to get out the Pidgeot on turn 2 and just search for absolutely everything he needs, kind of playing exactly into that prediction of whoever sets up Pidgeot wins.
Sergio, you know, has got to be feeling it a little bit in this spot. Pretty unlucky there to have both of those Pidgeot prized and just drew nothing off of Unfair Stamp, the main selling point for it as the A-spec of choice in this deck. It's doing exactly what it's meant to do, disrupt the opponent, slow them down, and just 1 missed beat is all it can take sometimes to win a matchup, especially a mirror match.
Okay, now, if you're Sergio here, what are you thinking? You're thinking, okay, I'm a game down. Doesn't feel amazing, of course, but you know you have to keep your head clear, right? It's very hard to kind of, or very easy to kind of lose sight of things. Maybe think, oh, you know, 1 game down, this is it. But you have to keep your head in the game, right? You've got to keep focused, brush it off, and think I can win the next 2 and can make the comeback.
Yeah, and Sergio opting to go second here, it seems. Wants to, you know, get the advantage of playing a supporter card, maybe using an attack like Cleffa's Grasping Draw. as we talk, there's pros and cons, but that's what Sergio feels more comfortable with. You've got to prioritize comfort over, what else maybe other people say is optimal or think. You got to trust yourself in a spot like this.
Yeah, you got to trust yourself. You've come this far already. You know you are a strong enough player and that you are a deserving finalist, so you have to brush it off and know you can make the comeback in the next two. But here we go. Henry going first, per Sergio's choice, and off to another very strong start with a Charmander, a Pidgey, and a Buddy Puffin for good measure.
Absolutely what you want to see, getting all of these basic Pokemon set up into play, threatening a lot of pressure with Rare Candy on turn 2. Looking at these prize cards, nothing super relevant. Of course, a Rare Candy combined with Pidgeot and Charizard, those are cards you play multiple copies of to avoid them both being prized. From there, though, it seems like Henry's going to be able to execute his strategy as well as possible, pending, of course, the other cards in his hand are strong enough for him to execute his game plan.
Yeah, this is something we have seen sometimes where you almost get a false impression of a really strong start, right? You go first, you have the Buddy Puffin, you have all your evolving basics, and then nothing to follow it up with. So we'll have to get a good look at the rest of Henry's hand to see. Oh, I do see... Oh, you know what, actually? Now that you mention it, I see a couple of Rare Candy, but I'm not sure if I see any way to search out evolutions or anything like that. I think it's 2 Rare Candy and a couple of Night Stretcher.
As of right now, it will not be a necessary problem, but that's definitely something to think of. As you're going through this Buddy Puffin search. It may be better to grab a Duskull in this spot, but because your hand is so weak and there are not a lot of top decks necessarily that could help you out, giving yourself Cleffa as a choice off Buddy Puffin now extends a few extra cards in your deck. Of course, those 5 Fire Energy and even something like Professor Turo's Scenario, albeit not a great card, of course, it's just there to pick up a Pokemon, but by picking up this Charmander, you could allow that Cleffa to come in and use that Grasping Draw attack.
Yeah, and this is so smart and a heads up from Henry, right? Because you know that you're ahead, but you don't want to get greedy. You take an honest look at your hand and you realize, okay, my setup is decent here, but I haven't got a great follow-up. So, for a worst case scenario, let me just get the Cleffa out so that I can, if I really need to, just do that Grasping Draw. Like you said, even give myself more outs to draw out of this bad hand if my top deck isn't that great.
See if there's anything else here for Henry. As it is, pretty good turn 1, as action will be passed over to Sergio, and he as well having a great hand to start things off. Buddy Puffin to follow, and also that Arven supporter card, which is exactly what you want to play in these first few turns to solidify your setup.
Yeah, once again, showing the advantage of going second, being able to play that supporter, and unlike Henry, of course, if Sergio decides to go for a Cleffa himself, being that he is going second, he'll be able to attack, and you make use of that Grasping Draw straight away to refill his hand to 7.
I'm sure he'll be more than happy to see these are the 6 cards that are prized. Nothing super relevant. Now that Fezandipity EX we saw was useful for Sergio and is a great card in this matchup and in practically every single matchup with that Flip the Script ability. But from there, it seems like both players' prizes will allow them to navigate the game as intended, as we'll see Buddy Puffin grab both Charmander and also has a Nest Ball in the hand. This time, Sergio looks like is going to prioritize Rotom V, not just for that instant charge ability, but also since it's a great Forest Sealstone user.
Yeah, it makes complete sense here. And with that Arven, of course, you will be able to go ahead and grab that Forest Sealstone along with another Buddy Puffin. So Sergio is absolutely ready to go for turn 2. This is not going to be like game 1. There will be a Pidgeot setup here. His bench is going to be perfect. He's going to probably end this turn on an instant charge for good measure as well. So yeah, not even needing to put down the Cleffa. Really strong turn 1 from Sergio. Yeah,
an excellent turn 1 here for Sergio. Will be able to end things off with that instant charge, a super powerful ability that allows you to draw 3 cards. However, it does end your turn, but there's no better time to use that than on a turn where you're choosing not to attack, because of course attacking is the last action you do in the Pokemon TCG.
Yeah, and of course, unlike with Cleffa, which does draw cards until you have 7 cards in your hand, doesn't matter how many cards you have with Rotom, you can just, whenever you want, just use the instant charge ability and draw 3 more cards, top it up to a huge hand size, and really strong turn just ending there on the instant charge. Not even going to use the Forest Sealstone yet.
And wow, it's just a Radiant Charizard top deck for turn for Henry.
Oh, no!
Has to just pass the turn back. This is absolute disaster. Pending Sergio can set up his board from this point. Does, of course, have the Forest Sealstone, Charmeleon getting evolved right away. And I think there's a solid combination. Having the Ultra Ball and the Forest Sealstone along with that Charizard EX means that this Rotom can grab one rare candy to evolve into Pidgeot, and a second rare candy means Charizard and Pidgeot can both be online turn 2.
Yeah, and that's so brutal, right? You give yourself the best chance possible to give yourself an out to a draw by putting down this Cleffa, but then the top deck just does not help you at all, and Sergio's probably going to be able to run away with this game here, honestly.
Can't count Henry out just yet, but things are definitely looking grim. There's the quick search ability, can search for another additional card of choice, and it will just be another rare candy Pidgeot, rare candy Charizard, the dream setup for any Charizard player. Sergio, for sure.
Yeah, rare candy, Charizard, Infernal Rain, 2 energies going straight onto that Charizard, no questions asked. Made possible with the use of that Forest Seal Stone and with the Star Alchemy, with the quick search, just setting up the absolute perfect board. What do you do if you're Henry here? Just hope you top deck into something better, right?
Yeah, and there's a weird scenario here where you could actually use Boss's Orders to target the Cleffa down just because of how bad the hand is, but instead, just going to use Burning Darkness, take the knockout. What's the draw for turn? It's a Defiance Band.
Oh,
There's
no.
really not a lot going on in this hand. A few of these counter cards, of course, Defiance Band working on having more prizes. Something like Counter Catcher, there's a pair of those in the hand too, but is it really worth playing a powerful gusting card like Counter Catcher if it's just to buy yourself some time? Usually it's not, but in this case, you need all the help that you can possibly get.
Yeah, I mean, it is also another card you can play out of your hand, even just to maybe force a retreat from a Rotom or something like that. It also means you can draw more with Grasping Draw. There are a few more cards in Henry's hand that he can play out as well. That Defiance Band, he can preemptively attach it to a Charmander. It doesn't feel amazing, but you got to do what you got to do when your hand is this weak, right? And yeah, he's going to go for the Counter Catcher.
So it will be the Counter Catcher. We'll see what Pokemon is brought up into the active spot. It will be the Charmeleon, so it does have a 2 retreat cost.
Ooh, hefty.
However, if there is another Charizard EX, that can essentially power itself up. But regardless, if Charizard EX came into play, a Pokemon would be able to attack this turn. As we see Defiance Band come down, and even going to bench a Pokemon that's good in the later game, the Radiant Charizard, just to try and draw more cards off the Grasping Draw attack from Cleffa.
Yeah, and exactly like you said, maybe Sergio could have thought if it might have been worth just bringing up that Cleffa and then attacking into it just to stop this draw out. But, you know, as it stands, Henry been bailed out a tiny bit here, although, oh, that hand still doesn't look great, though.
Not great for cards to draw. He may need help again from this top deck, as Sergio will immediately use the quick search to start this turn off, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some way for either Charizard to come into play or something like Professor Turo's Scenario to evolve this. The big thing, however, is there is a Fire Energy in the prize cards and one in the discard pile. So because of that, you can't evolve straight into Charizard, and instead, Sergio will have to commit his supporter for turn to that Professor Turo Scenario, allowing him to pick this Charmeleon up and move in a new Pokemon to the active spot.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate because it means, of course, you can't play that Boss's Orders, which could have been nice to bring up that Pidgey, for example, if you wanted to go ahead and take that away as an out, but instead just going to be, oh, do you notice something, Ethan?
What is it, Freya?
No, I said, do you notice something?
Nope.
No? Okay, sorry.
All I see is that terrestrial Charizard coming up and taking a knockout, and immediately Henry will be on the clock. He's going to need a lot of help here. What is the top deck for turn? It's a Nest Ball. There's definitely a usable card as long as Pheasantipity EX is in the deck. That Flip the Script ability can allow him to draw 3 cards since a Pokemon was knocked out. And there are a lot of rare candy, Freya, so a lot of cards off the top of the deck can be a big help for Henry here.
Yeah, and the fact that that Pidgey wasn't able to be targeted down because Sergio was forced to use the Professor Turo's Scenario, it might be just a little bit of grace that Henry needed to buy himself to make a comeback here. So this is going to be a very, very big free cards off of this Flip the Script and Pheasantipity. Nest Ball to put it down, shuffle the deck. What does he see off of these? It's going to be very, very big.
Everything, every decision in the TCG matters, but more than ever here for Henry to keep himself alive in this game too, has got to put something together. There's lots of pieces in the hand, but those are only one piece of the puzzle, few pieces of the puzzle. What do we see? Rotom, an Unfair Stamp does find the Rotom V, but I don't think there's a Forest Seal Stone, and while Unfair Stamp is a great card to give yourself a fresh hope of life, you are going to shuffle back both of those rare candy that are in the hand and have to try and find them again off this new shuffled hand of 5 cards.
Yeah, but at this point you have to, right? If nothing else, just to cut down Sergio's options a little bit, even though the Pidgeot is already established, it's kind of, yeah, you have to fire it here.
And it does have a Counter Catcher in the hand. I'd really like to see Henry try and take 2 prizes this turn if he wants to, you know, stay ahead, or rather keep pace in this game. If you just attack into this Charizard again this turn, that damage down the line could be essentially irrelevant compared to damage placed onto some of these bench Pokemon. So we'll see if Henry wants to use that second counter catcher here or save onto it later.
Yeah, I think he's very much debating or using it, or rather, he knows he wants to use it, but he just wants to decide what to target. So we'll target down that Rotom now with the counter catcher. He's debating whether to bench the Duskull as well, but actually he's going to opt not to, and is just going to fire off that unfair stamp.
Yeah, I think a smart choice. A lot of players would say, oh, I want to bench that Duskull since I don't want to draw back into it. However, this does leave the space open for Henry to find a card like Lumineon V to put onto that final bench spot so that Arven can be super powerful, grabbing the Forest Seal Stone and an item card like Rare Candy to get a Charizard, or ideally Pidgeot and Charizard into play.
Yeah, so the free cards of Defense and Dipsy were very important. They did flip the script and they got back into this game, but now it's going to come to this unfair stamp. It will put Sergio to 2 cards with a little bit less to work with, 5 cards to find some combination of cards to put together a comeback here on this turn. Either, like you said, a Pidgeot, maybe even a Charizard, just take 2 prizes, just something to work with here when Henry has really not been having the good grace given to him by his deck so far.
So this is step number 1. Disrupt your opponent, find some cards.
I see an
those
Arven.
are a pretty good 2 cards to start things off. Now, of course, Sergio can find any card he chooses to off of the quick search ability, pending that Pidgeot EX is not removed from play. But there it is. Arven being played for turn can grab Rare Candy and Forest Seal Stone. Now, that Forest Seal Stone could be used if Lumineon comes into play. And while this could be great at getting Charizard out into play and taking 2 prizes, Lumineon's just another liability you really don't want to have on your bench.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if he drew the Lumineon, but he did draw the Rotom V, so maybe given that he's not searching a supporter right now, that would be, it still doesn't feel great. 190 HP is not a lot, but if you want to use his Forest Seal Stone, you need to bench a V Pokemon, so you might not have a choice. Yeah, there it is.
It will be the Rotom over the Lumineon.
Both banned, yeah.
Both Pokemon will still be knocked out, assuming Henry is planning on knocking this Rotom V, as it will boost Sergio's Burning Darkness damage to 240. We will see the Forest Seal Stone be used, and I think that signals Rare Candy potentially as the choice, or a Charizard, either or, whichever is not in the hand. It will be the Rare Candy Charizard, and Henry is able to respond here for 2 prizes, but again, not having the stability of Pidgeot EX has proved to be the narrative for both players on whether or not they're being in a favored position to win this game.
Yeah, unfortunately, Henry there forced to go for the Charizard because taking the 2 prizes is far too important here. Sure, you would love to have this Pidgeot set up, but if you're not taking 2 prizes, you are falling far too behind in tempo. So having to prioritize here smartly, it's what you got to do in this situation to keep yourself alive. And then it will be the Burning Darkness with 240 damage, taking the knockout on this Rotom V as we head back over to Sergio.
Does find a counter catcher as the top deck for turn. And we'll see the quick search instantly be used for Sergio to find a card. And I think this is time where you got to put your foot on the gas and try and take prizes as quickly as possible. You've got Pidgeot in play. You've got Charizard powered up. Something like Boss's Orders twice, or even Boss's Orders in combination with the powerful Cursed Blast could be all Sergio needs to close this game out.
Yeah, I didn't quite see what he grabbed there off the quick search, but we did see earlier that the Turo had to be used to pick up the Charmeleon, of course, and one thing that Sergio will still need with 1 energy prize is get some energy back into the deck. Oh, we do see there Rare Candy into the Dusknoir, actually.
Wow, Rare Candy Dusknoir, keeping that in play. Will he use Cursed Blast now? It is going to be used onto this Charizard EX. Interesting decision using Cursed Blast now. Now, of course, it will give Henry a prize card in this spot, but this is where things get a little bit dangerous. There's always the potential for a card we haven't talked about yet, Thornton, to come into play and essentially cheat a Dusknoir out, since Henry is now just at 3 prize cards left and Sergio has gone down to 2. Something like Burning Darkness when your opponent only has 1 prize plus a Curse Blast could give Henry the cards he needs to win. It's going to be a lot to find. I don't know if Henry will be able to do it, but if he can, he will be the LAIC champion.
Maybe would have been a little bit more possible if the Pidgeot was in play. So I think, Joe, once again, I think it's going to come down to that Serendipity that flip the script. If you can find the pieces to put together this combo, you will become the LAIC champion. This is an opening that Henry now has because of the way Sergio played out his turn.
So there are a few pieces already in the hand for Henry that are solid. Rare Candy and Dusknoir, and does also have Lumineon V, and that could search out the Thornton. So the choice here for Henry is, how do you want to sequence everything here? Can you search out every card before you go for this play? He's gonna just use the flip the script right now.
Oh, see an
Ultra Ball,
Rare
Rare Candy.
I mean, that does it, you know.
And Counter Catcher. Hold on here. Let's see if Henry has the pieces. I think he might just have it here.
Yeah, he does.
Let's see here if Henry can find this play. Finds the Duskull. That's step number 1. Step 2, Freya, is put that in the discard pile, and he's looking at the Thornton.
Yeah, I think you've seen it, because you can use the Curse Blast to KO 1 and 2 bench Pokemon, use the Counter Catcher to bring up the pitcher, and then Burning Darkness to KO it, and then you will become the international champion.
Don't even need the Counter Catcher. You could push Sergio to 1 prize card, so Burning Darkness does 330 damage to this active Charizard. Here we go. Let's see it get played out. We'll see the second Ultra Ball go into the Charizard EX. Burning Darkness is now online thanks to Infernal Rain, and we will see potentially Lumineon come and find that final piece. The only question here, though, is there another Ultra Ball in the hand?
There is!
And there is! I think Henry has all the pieces he needs. Ultra Ball for any Pokemon, doesn't even need the Dusknoir, it's already in the hand. And these last final steps are between Henry, Kuninari, and an international championship. There's Lumineon, and the Thornton comes out. As long as it switches a Pokemon that's been in play for a turn, like this Rotom, Rare Candy, Curse Blast onto one of these bench Pokemon, and Henry Kuninari will close out game number 2 with a powerful Burning Darkness and becomes your LAIC champion.
Henry Kuninari, o campeão da América Latina de 2025!
Congratulations to our junior division international champion. Just when things looked extremely grim, flipped the script, Serendipity EX came in clutch, and Henry was able to put together the combination of cards to close out game 2 and become an international champion.